All right, yeah. So our first stop, as Lenae said, was Cooper's Rock, and this was a little hot tip we got from our friend Gail, who used to live in West Virginia. And this was a perfect spot for us to land because it wasn't too far into the state, and it was just such a unique ecosystem here. Just really beautiful scenic overlooks over the Cheat River, great campground. And then just some awesome hiking. So we're going to show you some pictures of that here. All right, let me just move this little box here. All right, so this was the overlook here at Cooper's Rock, and just really beautiful stone structures here, this rocky cliff overlooking the Cheat River Valley and Cheat Lake. Here, this was at sunset. That's the absolutely beautiful river valley here. You can see we had some amazing weather to enjoy.
We went in September. The timing was somewhat, it was kind of when we had planned to go, but we wanted to wait until our kids had started school. And the nice thing about doing that is there were cooler nights and almost no mosquitoes,
yes,
which
that was awesome.
For this area we were in is a really good thing.
Yeah, especially when we got to Dolly Sods, that can be really buggy. So yeah, we lucked out.
Yeah, so we decided to kind of base camp for a few days at Cooper's Rock State Forest and enjoy the day hikes there that our friend Gail had suggested and kind of in that area. And there are a couple of campgrounds in that park. So we found a place and kind of set up camp and just did some day hikes for a couple of days, just to kind of, warm up our legs and just start getting a feel for the area. It happened to be my birthday one of the nights that we were there, and so Jessie made me cupcakes, and so that was a pleasant around the campfire kind of dessert that night. And we really enjoyed all the things that the area had to offer.
We certainly did, yeah. And one of the, I think, real highlights was this Rock City Trail, which Gail had mentioned to us. It was just so unique. It was these rocks, these tall rocks, like 20, 25, 30 feet, I think, tall in many places, that we could just walk through as if it was like an ancient city. It was just very unique. So we'll just take you through a couple pictures here of that trail.
And the approach was pretty interesting because we were just kind of walking along at the level where you can see the trees here, and then all of a sudden there was just this split and a chasm, and you could just kind of walk right down into this really amazing otherworldly area.
Here you can kind of get an idea of the scale of these rock faces. Some of them are quite massive.
We saw lots of small wildlife. We did see evidence of larger wildlife in terms of tracks and scat and things like that. But the very first morning, I was just overjoyed to see this blue-tailed skink right near where we started out for that hike. So that was kind of fun. It's pretty cute.
And both Lenae and I have quite the penchant for lichens and moss. So we had to whittle down the photos of the lichen and moss, but we shared a couple with you guys. There was a lot of beautiful things to behold, miniature scale here. We like to notice the details. This was a massive tree. It's hard to maybe get the scale of it, but it was one of the few old growth, I think, kind of left in the area. This whole area had been logged at one point, but this one was left, I think, because it was in a very difficult to reach place in this Rock City Trail. Here you can see us exploring some of the tighter spots here. There were just many, many places to explore, little thresholds and crevices in the rocks. And you could just wander. All right, so here we are. Later on in the trail, we kind of continued on the Rock City Trail and met up with another trail to get down to the Cheat River Valley. This was a really lovely spot that we sat, and this was your birthday, I think, that we were here in the water soaking our feet, and it was just a very lovely, lovely spot to be in. I wanted to mention that our friend Gail, who had worked with the Friends of the Cheat back in West Virginia, just sent us a news article a couple of days ago that the acid mining that had been done in West Virginia from several of the coal mines had really done a number on the Cheat River, and the Friends of the Cheat has spent years cleaning up this river valley from the acid mining. And just, I think it was March 5th, there was another blowout from Muddy Creek, I believe it was, from the TNT mine. They had put in water treatment plants to keep some of this acid water from going back into the Cheat, and there was just a massive blowout again, where the water treatment pumps weren't able to keep up with it and just bypassed it. So unfortunately, this Muddy Creek now that goes into the Cheat River is running mustard yellow with lots of acid going back into this river. So we were really heartbroken to hear that, really heartbroken for the Friends of the Cheat who've spent so many years cleaning this up. So our hearts go out to them, our hearts go out to the river, and if you have the opportunity to support Friends of the Cheat, they definitely have a lot of work to do ahead of them now again because of this.
We spent that entire day hiking, and there were so many different trails, and you could just kind of hike from one trail to the next. So next we wanted to go see this old furnace. It was an iron ore processing furnace, and there had been a whole complex with over 200 people living there, and there had been a school, and there had been this whole, back in the 1800s, there had been this whole population there.
But you'd never tell. It was just a dense forest.
Right. But then the furnace is still existing. So we went to see that. There's some impatience and a little sweat bee going to pollinate. But this is what the area looks like now. So you really can't tell that there was once just this huge kind of population there. And one thing I should have included a photo. I had a photo of that furnace, and Jessie is standing. There was kind of that little triangle in the beginning, and it towers above her, just that little triangle in the front. So that it's a good 50 feet tall or something. So we saw some great insects and reptiles and all sorts of great things, including this eastern garter snake, which kind of visited with us for a little while before it decided to go off and do its own thing.
Sunning himself on the rock there. All right, so another place that our friend Gail had said that we should not miss is this grove of old growth hemlocks. There had been a lot more in this area, but this was a remnant of old growth hemlocks and a really lovely trail. It wasn't a super long trail. It wasn't. Not a super big area of remnant hemlocks, but magical nonetheless. And we hiked there around sunset. Yeah. So the light filtering through the forest was really beautiful. Hard to get really great pictures in this area, but it was just a magical little forest with big old trees. You can see some of the character here. Again, hard to tell the scale, but this was a massive old hemlock. You can kind of tell from all the moss growing on the base there. Very tall trees.
And this forest, even though this was just a few miles from where we had been hiking earlier in the day, and it was nearing sunset, but we actually took a whole nother hike after that. That's true, so yeah. It was several hours till sunset. It was dark in this forest.
That's right.
So that's maybe why it felt like it, because the trees were so large and the canopy was so dense that it was really dark. So it was kind of eerie, but in an interesting way to hike through that.
Yeah.
Oops, I was thinking we had. Oh
yeah, some mushrooms. Yeah, mushrooms that I can't pronounce. Not even gonna try. But the trees had just such amazing character. So thanks, Gail, if you're listening, for that great hike.
So we decided the next day that we would take a trip. It was only about 45 minutes or so, that we, a 45-minute drive or so, that we would drive just across the border into Maryland to see this swamp. And there was another one that Gail had recommended. And the swamp, actually, this natural area is partly in Maryland and partly in
you can see on the
West
map
Virginia.
there where kind of the border is.
Oh, right,
but,
right. Yeah. So we went to explore. We were the only people there that day. We didn't see a soul. So that was really nice. And there was kind of a variety of ecosystems there. There was a pine forest, and there was like kind of a plantation forest, and then of course there was this amazing swamp with boardwalks, and it was full of, in the fall, it was full of goldenrod and cotton grass and stiff gentian, which we kind of saw everywhere. We have a gentian in northern Illinois called the bottle gentian that we tend to see a lot. That's a little bit deeper purple than this, but this one was a little taller and a little different, but it was really a gorgeous day.
We also have a lot of pictures of this that we had to whittle down because it was just magical landscape. Lots of cool plants.
Yeah.
And it was a moody day too, with the clouds kind of moving in and out. So the sun would shine in, you know, certain areas, and then the clouds would, you know, filter through. So it was interesting. And you can see that the landscape is really overtaking the boardwalk there too. Nature is taking over.
Lots of club moss and things too.
Yeah, a lot of diversity there. It was just beautiful. Then we had some high adventure. We decided to go whitewater rafting on the Yakagani River, or the Yak, as I think the locals call it. And there were class, I think 1 through 5 rapids, right, on there. So I had never done anything that extreme on the river. So it was really exciting and a very beautiful river. We had a great guide. There were also kayakers out here. Some were just independent kayakers. Some were running safety on the rapids. This river is not always runnable. It was, I think, Friday and Saturday. I think just 2 days a week they would open a dam upstream, and then, you know, there's just a mass of people just waiting to get on the river. But it never felt too like crowded or anything.
No, and in fact, that first image was not ours. It was a stock photo from the website, and I never felt like the rafts were kind of there were that many that close.
Yeah.
But you only have a small window during which to actually run this river. This is actually us, though. So Jessie's in the lead. They're ready to take on this little waterfall that we're about to go over. And our guide was not originally from that area, but he had lived there a long time and had been a river guide for his long career. And he had just great stories and information. And he was very interesting. And he was also one part of the kind of safety team that made up of some of those kayakers. So we would often run the shoot through first and then pull off to the side and wait. And he had a line that he could throw if anybody needed a rescue. There was a couple of rescues.
Yeah. We were actually lucky, I think, to have him as our guide because of, you know, just that positioning to get to watch people come down. But also there were several like younger guides that were kind of a little bit show-offy. So and they were the ones that tipped over. So we were glad to have this expert.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, and that was just kind of showing the whole route that we took from where we put in to where the outfitter was. And that was in Friendsville, Maryland, which I just think is a great name for a city.
Yeah.
So that night we came back to Cooper's Rock and did a late night hike on the Rattlesnake Trail. There are rattlesnakes that live there. We didn't see any, so that was okay.
Which is fine. Yeah.
We saw something a little smaller. It's an American giant millipede. You can see it's about the size of a finger, but it was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
Pretty cool little guy, and more amazing rock formations that we got to hike along and hike through. Great sunset. We actually took this trail all the way back to the Cooper's Rock and sat there at sunset. That sunset photo in the beginning was from that day. And it was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So now this is what you're really all here to hear about. And that was the actual backpacking trek. And you can see we've put the route on the map so you can kind of see all of what we covered.
Mm-hmm.
But
so we started at the Bear Rocks Trailhead, which is a pretty popular place to go. There's, I think it's the most photographed place in West Virginia. And you can just, you can drive up there and just take pictures from the lookout. But when we got there, the higher up we went on this gravel road, it got mistier and mistier, and it was just completely shrouded in fog when we got there. So while there were other cars in the parking lot, it wasn't as crowded as I think it might, otherwise have been. And it was spectacular because it was so mysterious. We did not see a view at all when we got there. We did not see the view.
You can kind of look behind us.
Mm-hmm.
You had about 30 feet.
Yes, exactly. And you can tell we're a little excited here, got to do our favorite thing. And here you get another idea of just how dense that fog was. And to go into a new landscape, not really knowing what to expect, it was very interesting not having a real good sense of exactly where we were. Here's the map, which was not the greatest on the trailhead, a little bit worn out. And
of course, we had a good topo map with us.
Yeah. So if you're going backpacking, definitely take a topo map.
Yeah.
We relied on that quite a bit. And we had read some reviews of Dolly Sods too, that it could be kind of confusing at some of the trail junctures, and some people had complained about getting lost and things like that. We didn't really find that to be true. We thought that the trails were pretty well marked. There was maybe a couple places where we could see that people could kind of get off the beaten path where it was just really rocky, and we'll show you some of those pictures. But overall, we would have a pretty good review, I think.
I think so. Yeah, the wayfinding, I thought it was actually pretty easy.
Yeah, you can see I packed pretty light for the trip. We had everything we needed and more. All right. Okay, so that's the beginning.
Oh, it's okay.
All right. I'll let Lenae drive.
So we kind of arrived and started the first day after lunch. So we weren't planning to make a very long trek that first day. We only went about 5 miles or so to our first campsite. And that was good. That was kind of just a good way to get started. But the fog never cleared. There were a variety of ecosystems. There were some swampy areas. There were different types of forest. We pretty much had any kind of trail surface you can imagine. We had over the course of the 4 days that we were there. The fern growth was just absolutely amazing. Of course, we were there in the falls, but it wasn't quite, things weren't quite changing yet. So it was very lush. Lots of stream crossings throughout all the trails that we took. Some had great rock bridges like this, some did not. I love this picture that Jessie took.
We love to take pictures of the details. So we probably had about 2,000 pictures altogether. We had to
something like that.
Scale it down a little bit. This is more that cotton grass like we saw at Creamsville Swamp. It really popped too in that landscape with the fog.
Yes. So we made our way that day on about 3 different trails and found a place to camp the first night. You can actually camp technically anywhere throughout Dolly Sods Wilderness, but as you'll see in some of the photos we show you, finding a place that you can actually pitch a tent is another story.
Yes.
So yes, theoretically you can camp anywhere, but there just happened to be this little grassy opening in this amazing field of ferns, and so we decided that was a place to camp. And just across the trail there was a fire scar. Now you can make fires, but they want you only to do it in places where there are already established fire scars. So we tended to find places where we were, although we only made a fire, I think, the last night.
Yeah.
For our food, we took a variety of kind of fresh and dried foods. I find it easier when backpacking to do dehydrated dinners because, at the end of the day, it's nice to just heat some water and put it in and you're good to go.
And it's the one time the dehydrated food actually tastes good. That's right. Been on the trail all day.
That's right. But we were in bear country. So there are black bears in Monongahela National Forest, just like there are in so many other places. And so you can see in the distance there are some brightly colored bags hanging in a tree, and that is, those are dry bags. And we didn't need bear canisters in this place. Other places we backpacked, we did need those. But we use the dry bags because it keeps the food dry inside, and it also hopefully keep some of the smells of the food inside. And that was kind of the first order of business. Every time we picked a place for camp, we went and hung the food first downwind of the camp and some distance from where we were actually sleeping. And then we set up the tent and kind of went on to the other things. So that first slide was actually the next morning when it was sunny, but this was what it looked like that first night when we arrived. And there's our little fire scar. And actually we were getting ready for dinner. The food bags are next to the fire scar there as we were getting ready to get our food out of our packs. So the next day, the sun shone kind of early in the morning, but then it was mostly rainy.
Yeah, and the forecast, I think, for that day was calling for pretty heavy rains around 2 p.m., I think.
And thunderstorms.
And thunderstorms, yes. So we had to debate kind of what to do, whether or not we wanted to keep on our original itinerary or slightly change things around. So we decided to camp a little bit earlier than we would have normally done. We were planning on going on a big loop, but we decided to camp earlier and then take some day treks. So
here's an example of the trail marker, actually. So pretty much at every junction, there was one of these signs, or there might have been multiple signs at the same junction. And we felt like they were pretty well marked and pretty easy to follow in conjunction with our topo map to help us know where to go. Now, I suppose if someone had gone in without a map and they didn't know what trail was which,
never go backpacking without a map.
But that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
No. And a good quality, very detailed topographical map is important.
Yes. And we got the purple lizard, which is a West Virginia thing. Well, not just West Virginia, I guess, but it's not around here, but they're great maps. They have kind of points of interest and cool things on there. So we were really happy with.
Yeah, I'm usually a fan of the National Geographic topo maps, but there actually wasn't a National Geographic topo map for Dolly Sods. So this was kind of the choice, but it worked great.
It was great. Yeah. And you could just see a little bit more of the landscape. It was really, diverse as we moved through the park, a lot of different areas. This was a really great campsite that no one was at, but we had only hiked, I think, maybe an hour or something. Yeah. So we weren't going to camp there, but we wished it was a little bit further into the trail because it was just beautiful. We were standing right by where there was like a fire pit, and where you could put your tent. So really beautiful spot. The leaves were starting to drop and they were just really gorgeous, contrasted with the moss. This was a really fun trail that we walked on. I think we were both filled with wonder and awe, which I'm sure is not conveyed in this photograph, but the whole rocky trail was covered with a stream. The stream kind of converged with this trail, and it was not too deep, as you can see, but the creek was running through this trail, and the red leaves were kind of floating on the water, and it was just so beautiful. We were really both mesmerized by that. You can see you really had to look down. Make sure that your footing was secure. Lots of opportunities to break an ankle if you're not paying attention. And Lenae, you had just had knee surgery.
I had knee surgery earlier in the year. And there was the one day that was our longest day, which was day 3. I was hurting by the end.
Yeah.
I was happy to have trekking poles, made a big difference.
She was a total trooper though. She didn't slow down at all.
I don't know about that. So because they were calling for a pretty intense rainstorm with lightning and thunder, we decided that we wanted to make camp early that day and then day hike. We just thought it was maybe a wiser decision because for those of you that camp, you know, it's certainly possible to put up a tent when it's pouring down rain, but you're unlikely for the inside of the tent to be all that dry when you're done. So we decided to set the tent up before the rainstorm came, and then day hike from there. The good thing to backpack with is a tarp. It doesn't have to be very big, but you can see we hung it up as a rain cover, and it allowed us to dry some things out. You know, kind of keep them under that cover, so even when it's raining, things could dry. We did stand under it at one point when it was raining quite hard.
Yeah, and you can see we used our trekking poles as a coat rack and a hat rack there too.
Right, yeah.
Multiple uses.
Everything works, you use what you've got. So from there, we left some of the contents of our backpacks in the tent, and we of course had our food bags hung. And then we still took our packs and did a little bit of a day hike. And being fall, there were great mushrooms. These are waxy caps. I think they may be scarlet cap, but the shape doesn't quite look right, but they were very tiny, so I don't think they were fully developed.
Yeah, that's a tree root that's not that big.
Yeah, they were very, very tiny. Oh, and I forgot to look this up.
Yeah, the fungus.
Yeah, there was this fungus growing out of this tree that was absolutely turquoise.
It was so neat.
So
little jewels.
Yeah. So this just gives you an idea of another type of landscape that we hiked through.
Yeah, there was lots of mud. You definitely have to be prepared for lots of mud. Here, you can see what we had to deal with. And that was something we had read about ahead of time, that was going to be a consideration. And there were certainly spots like this that we had to strategize about how we were going to, you know, get through there without, you know, widening the trail at all, because that can be very detrimental to the ecosystem, but not, you know, completely submerging our boots in mud either. So.
And that's not a creek, that is the trail.
That is the trail.
And if you look carefully, you can see there are a few rocks that you can kind of see. And so it was a little bit of a challenge to try to step to these somewhat submerged rocks and hope that they weren't going to sink in. Alongside that is if we were balancing on a rock and we were using our trekking poles, sometimes the pole would go down a couple of feet. And it was pretty mucky, couple of feet. So we really didn't want to fall off into that. So that was kind of a fun challenge.
It was.
Made for a good day. So on the third day, then we just worked. We kind of decided that we liked what we did the previous day in terms of having kind of a shorter, you know, 4, 5, 6 mile hike to get to camp, and then taking a longer hike as a day hike. And so that's what we decided to do on the third day as well. And so we decided we wanted to camp up on the ridge. We knew it would be drier, and we knew we were going to have to get water from a lower point. We'll talk about water more in a minute, but we wanted to kind of be up where maybe we would have a view, and just to kind of be up there in a different kind of place. So we worked our way up to this ridge trail that's kind of on the northwest end of the park, and it had this great view of the valley.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. And that was another way that the topo map really came in handy too, was, you know, being able to see where all the streams were, right? We knew that there wasn't any water up here, so we had to plan ahead. So that's also really important if you've never been backpacking before, to keep that in mind. You want to know where you can get your water from.
And finally, we had a sunny day.
It was really beautiful.
We had gorgeous days when we were base camping at Cooper's Rock, but then it had been kind of rainy and cloudy the next couple of days. So we worked our way just a little bit up that ridge trail until we found a place where we wanted to camp. Go ahead.
And as Lenae mentioned before, you know, it was sometimes hard to find places that were flat, not too rocky. Usually when we looked for like the kind of the coniferous forested areas, that was when we could find some soft ground and, you know, look for a spot to avoid roots and rocks. But this was a really lovely spot. It wasn't very far from an overlook that we could just hike over to and admire the view.
And I mentioned the tarp earlier that we used as rain cover the previous night. And if you look carefully under our backpacks here, we're over by where I'm standing, the tarp is now a ground cover. It's a great way when I think we were packing up to leave actually the next morning, but it's a great way to kind of keep everything clean and dry and have a place to kind of repack everything, because when you take the tent down, you need to be able to get that into your pack. Unless you've got it strapped on the outside. And sometimes the order that things have to go in, you know, you kind of need to have the pack apart even when the tent is down. So it's handy to have those tarps.
Absolutely. And you see our water bottles there. Those were Lenae's family's water bottles, and they were great because they're like collapsible. So they didn't take up a lot of space when they weren't full, which was really nice and easy to fill and easy to use with our water filtration system, which we'll talk about in a minute. There's another view of our spot here.
But you can see that this 3-person tent just kind of barely fit right there, and there wasn't a lot of other space where we could have put a different tent or another tent rather.
Yeah. And we had read that, I think because of the pandemic, Dolly Sods was a very popular spot in the summer, so much so that we were a little concerned. We called the ranger to make sure that it wouldn't be too crowded when we went, but because school had just kind of recently gone back in session, it was actually relatively quiet when we went. But I imagine that in the busy summer months, it probably could have been a little challenging to find a spot to camp, even though you could theoretically camp anywhere.
I mean, the whole 4 days we were there, we probably really only saw a dozen people. There were probably a few more at that first camp, that first night, but that we passed by. But.
Yeah, there was kind of like a little hippie enclave there in the forest too, with people playing music. It was kind of interesting.
And the reason we included this slide is because you can see our campsite, our tent up there, but I'm actually on my way walking back from where our food cache was in a tree. And it was even farther behind me than that was. So you can kind of see the kind of distance that you want to keep between your food bags and your camp. So this was kind of our longest day. We did about 15 miles of hiking that day. And you can kind of see the terrain laid out in front here. So it wasn't just straight and it wasn't just flat, but we really wanted to go and see Lion's Head, which is this rock outcropping that's kind of farther south in the park, kind of south central part of the park. And so we worked our way there. Yeah,
and if it hadn't have that forecast of thunderstorms, we would have worked our way around this loop. You can kind of imagine maybe where the trail that just stops there, how it would kind of contour around that mountain and head back up to the yellow lines you see up in the northern part of the picture, or the upper part of the picture. And so, yeah, that was our original route, but we ended up actually getting in some extra miles doing it this way. But it was a lot of fun.
And the reason that we didn't follow our original planned route was that route was going to take us through a pretty steep valley with a creek in it.
Yes.
And we knew that there weren't going to be a lot of places to camp that weren't down right by the creek. And if you have a big rain event, you can have flooding and you can have water that moves quickly through a valley area, and it can become dangerous. And so we just thought, let's just not even put ourselves in that position. Let's just stay on the safe side of things. And
we had already done our rafting in the raft. We didn't want to do the rafting in our tent.
We did a little swimming, and so that was good. Yeah.
And here you can see just, you know, another kind of aspect of the trail, pretty rocky, lots of roots. And Lenae's knees were hurting, but you can't tell here with that beautiful smile. Really gorgeous creek here with a lot of tannin in the water. So it had that root beer coloration. Another pine forest here that was pretty lovely to walk through. We had a gorgeous waterfall. This was really the only waterfall that we saw on our route. There are others in the park, but this was a very lovely, lovely spot to sit and have an energy bar and take in the beauty here.
And that was only the top little part of the waterfall. It went quite a ways in both directions.
Yes,
but
that's true.
We couldn't get we couldn't really get close enough to take a picture of the full thing. We could walk out at the midpoint, but we couldn't access it from the bottom to get a picture of the whole thing.
Yes. So here Lenae is filtering water. This is kind of on our way back when we, as we mentioned, there wasn't going to be any water up by our campsite. So we wanted to make sure that we were filled up for that night and also the next day. So this was Lenae's gravity filter. It worked really well. It packed really light. Was that an MSR?
This one is a platypus.
Okay, platypus, yeah. It was great. Really worked out well for us.
So it has this upper bag has kind of a Velcro opening that you can open the whole bag and you can sweep it through the water. You want to use moving water if you can. So we're next to a creek here that's flowing. If you can't, if you're at a lake and the water is stagnant, it's safer to kind of go, if you can swim in the lake, go a ways and collect your water, but that's not always possible. But so the dirty water is in that top bag, and then gravity forces it through a filter. And the filter is, the proper number of microns to filter out all of the things like Giardia and potentially bad things that you don't want to contract while you're,
especially when you're out backpacking.
Yeah, and then the clean water flows into another bag. So we at the most, I think we probably, like that day we had quite a bit of water. We filled all of our containers, plus I think we brought back 1 or 2 of the filter bags with water. So that day we probably had 12 to 15 liters when we headed back to camp.
We wanted to make sure we had enough.
Yeah.
Because we still had to cook dinner and we wanted enough to drink
and breakfast in the morning too, right? And then our hike back.
Oh, here we are at the waterfall,
having our snack.
And we put this picture in because I remembered to bring my gaiters. Poor Lenae couldn't find her gaiters.
Well, no, I only found one.
Oh, you found one. That's right. You found one, which is not all that helpful. You could have one clean leg, but I was really glad that these are actually my husband's gaiters. I was really happy to have had them though, because you can see how much mud I picked up on those trails, and it was nice to just be able to take those off before getting in the tent.
I just had dirty pants.
Yes. More rocky trail here. This was on our way to that Lion's Head.
And it was pretty interesting. Go ahead. It was pretty interesting. Part of this area was this deep rhododendron forest. I think we do have a picture of it. This is up at Lion's Head when so the trail kind of goes around toward the base of this outcropping, but we climbed up to get the view.
And luckily someone had kind of told us what to look for. Otherwise we really would not have found this.
It was not obvious where you climbed up.
Yeah, and even with people telling us, it still wasn't very obvious. But
so this was kind of what we kind of, it's a little bit of bouldering to kind of get up. But once we got up, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, the view was worth it. Yeah.
And there were sections of trail that were just they were kind of very angular, sharp, jagged rocks. And so you really did have to pay attention to your footing.
And it was getting late in the day, and we definitely didn't want to do this trail in the dark at all.
That section.
Yeah, that section of the trail.
There's the Rhododendron Forest where it was just, and in some places I didn't take a picture, but in some places it was really just a footpath, and the rhododendrons were just kind of closing in, and it was otherworldly. It was really neat.
Yeah. So we knew when we were heading back that we would be coming back in the nighttime. And so we had our headlamps with, and luckily by the time it got kind of truly dark, we were on this path back up to our campsite, kind of on the ridge, and the rocks were white and they just were kind of illuminated the path for us. So
we didn't actually turn our headlamps on. We had them on, she's got hers on her head there, but we didn't actually turn them on until we got back to camp, and we're ready to start finding things.
Yeah, so it worked out really well. And there you can kind of see the topography there, Lion's Head. Very beautiful.
So the next day we were kind of heading along the rest of this ridge and then turning east and working our way back to the trailhead. And we woke up to the sun, but by the time we started hiking, we had fog again.
We did, yeah. So we were a little nervous that when we got out that we wouldn't be able to see that view, but.
Right. But thankfully, that changed very quickly and the sun came out to greet us again.
Yes.
And stayed with us for the rest of the trip. And if it wasn't rocks or it wasn't water, it was roots. So there were some certainly very easily accessible parts of the trail, but there were others that were a good challenge.
Definitely, for sure.
Excuse me.
And it was really nice that we had our trekking poles. I mean, when you're backpacking, I think it's really nice to have those for balance, but we really used our trekking poles a lot on this trip. Even when we didn't have our big packs on, we brought the trekking poles. Just more of the lovely view of the Canaan River or the Canaan Valley. There's like a ski resort down there, kind of a community, but it was a lovely view. Just some more of the pretty flowers and lichens. There was just a lot of diversity in this area with interesting plants, ferns, flowers, and lots of lichens and moss. Pretty artistic arrangement here. And fungi too. This was a rock we climbed up on for a nice view, and yeah, it was just lovely.
Yeah, and from that rock behind us is the Canaan Valley, and then in front of us is kind of where we're sorry.
Yeah, this was a trail that we were on. Yeah, so like it's kind of, we're kind of looking out into the landscape that we had just been hiking on. More rocks, and this was the area where I think could be a little bit easier to get off the path, because just where this these rocks were, they kind of went in all directions, so sometimes hard to discern the path, but it didn't take us too long to figure it out, especially with just dusty boot prints and whatnot on the rocks.
Well, and we knew roughly which direction we needed to go,
right?
So
that helped.
But these exposed rocks were just really lovely.
Yeah, they were. It was fun to scramble on there. And then more diversity here, but sunshine. So we got back and we got to see what it looked like without all the fog. We're a little dirtier here, but but very happy.
So because we had the sun that day, we decided to go explore this view. You can see in the distance on the map here, those beautiful soft Smoky Mountains and all the shades of blue. And that was what we were missing from the view 4 days earlier.
Right.
So we took our lunch, we got out by lunchtime. So we took our lunch and went up and sat on the bare rocks, which is quite a big exposed outcropping. It actually goes quite a distance. So
I had been happy to take off my boots at that point because my boots were totally saturated. I remember at that point. So I hiked part of the way out, I think, in my sandals, and you can see how I have some of the Dolly Sods on my toes.
That's right. That's right.
And there were quite a few more people in this area than when we came out too.
I mean, you can see it's not like there were so many people that you had to be near someone, but we definitely saw other people in this area who had clearly just driven up to take some photos in the Bear Rocks Preserve there. Yeah. So that was kind of the overall trip, backpacking part of the trip. But on our way heading back toward home, we wanted to make a stop that was a little bit of a personal one for me. My ancestors at one time had lived in West Virginia, and there's a town named Parsons, which is where my ancestors came from. My grandmother's maiden name was Parsons, although my ancestor left before the town was officially formed. But I wanted to go see Parsons, West Virginia, and kind of walk on some of the land that my ancestors had walked. So on our way to Parsons, West Virginia, we were using Google Maps. We were not using a printed topo map.
We should have.
But we were letting Google Maps direct us and tell us where to go. And so we needed to get across the Cheat River at one point, and there were bridges in places. And so we were following this place or this route that it was taking us on,
which was really interesting. It was very beautiful. I kind of felt like we actually were getting to see some more of like the hollows of West Virginia and just like these farms up in the mountains. So it was very beautiful.
And the last few miles were kind of very mountainous and narrow gravel roads and lots of switchbacks and up and over and around. And there were a few points where I was like, you know, trying to encourage the car, come on car, you can do it. You can get up this hill. And then we get down to the river where we want to cross.
Right. And Google Maps had showed like a bridge there or a line, like the road. The road continued. And it was called Rock Ford though. And we get there and we're like, you gotta be kidding me. It was literally a ford over the river that maybe with really big truck tires, you'd be okay doing. But in the minivan, we didn't think it was such a good idea. So we had to go back up and over the mountains, a few mountains, I think, and go all the way back to get back on another road to get to Parsons. And it's funny because right across the Cheat was like where we needed to be.
Right.
We could see it, but couldn't quite get there.
Right. We were so close. But
so poor Lenae didn't get as much time in Parsons because of that adventure.
That's okay. I made it. So that was just a pleasant little waypoint.
Yeah. All right.
So as we worked our way back, we drove about 5 miles or 5 hours,
yes,
5 hours or so that night. And this was the only night we didn't stay in the tent. We stayed in a yurt.
Yes. We weren't quite ready for like a hotel room or a house, you know, at that point. So we thought like this glamping was kind of a nice option for us.
Yeah.
So
we stayed in the yurt. It had this little outdoor space for a kitchen. That's our camp stove that we had brought with us, but that worked just great.
Yes.
We had a lovely breakfast.
Yeah, it was amazing vegan French toast that Lenae made.
Yeah.
Lenae doesn't mess around when she cooks for camping. We may have had, you know, dehydrated food on the backpacking trail, but that, you know, when we were camping, we ate pretty well.
We did. But this might have been our favorite part of the stay at the yurt. We had not had access to shower. Well, I think there was a shower house at the campground, the other campground, but not at the one we stayed in, so we didn't use it. So after being out for a week, gone for a week and out in the wilderness for 4 days, this outdoor shower was just perfect.
It was really awesome.
And it was nighttime. It was actually quite cold.
Yes.
But the shower was heated. So it was lovely to just kind of, you know, look up at the trees and be clean.
Yes, yeah, and run back into the yurt when we were done.
Yes. Yeah.
And we wanted to stay in this area because as we were looking at the route back home, we knew that Yellow Springs, Ohio was, you know, one of the possible routes back. And we heard really good things from some of our other friends about Yellow Springs and Glen Helen Nature Preserve and Antioch College. So we spent some time exploring this area on our way home because we weren't quite ready to leave nature, you know, the nature of the East behind yet. And we really lucked out here too, because during the pandemic, they had closed this nature preserve down. Antioch College wasn't able to afford to run it anymore. And then also because of the pandemic, wanting to make sure people were safe on the trails, they just didn't have the means to do all that. So they had closed it down for months. And I think it had just reopened like a couple days earlier before we got there. So we weren't sure if we'd be able to go when we first planned the trip, but we were able to go explore.
And this particular little spring waterfall here is what Yellow Springs was named for, the community. But it was a beautiful area to go and hike without our heavy packs.
Right.
Was also kind of novel.
Very nice, yeah. And Yellow Springs is just a really cute town. We walked the campus here at Antioch College, which a friend of mine her daughter went there. And so I was curious about the college, and it's beautiful old buildings and campus. kind of starting to be in a state of disrepair, though. They're in like a lack of funding, I think, and they don't have very many students right now. So it also kind of had a sad feel to it, just like a once really cool, thriving place that wasn't so much anymore.
Yeah.
But the downtown was lots of art galleries and cool stores, public art.
And we worked our way home, and we were happy to see our families, but it was just a delightful trip, all in all.
Yes. So that's our presentation, and we're going to unmute people now. So if you have any questions for us, we would love to hear. And I see Gail is on too. She's our friend from West Virginia who gave us all these wonderful ideas. So thank you, Gail. Hopefully you're able to relive some good memories with our pictures. So we're happy to take any questions. You might have to unmute yourself too. Yeah. We've unmuted you, but I think you also have to unmute yourself, some of you guys at least.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It has been ages since I've been to Dolly Sods, so I really don't remember the hiking there. Going to Dolly Sods is very accessible for like day hiking, or do you really need to backpack in?
I mean, we saw trail runners there running pretty much the whole like 20. Our original plan was to do about a 21-mile like double loop, and we saw trail runners doing that. So I mean, there are day hikes, but I mean, it's a really great place to backpack, but I think you could.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do loops, and there are lots of different places to go in. This is not the best map, but it gives you an idea of kind of the access wherever you see something that's coming in from the outside. That's those are roads around the outside, and so there are lots of places where you could kind of go in and do a loop, and there are lots of loops that are 3 to 7 miles that you could do.
Oh, okay.
So yes, I think you could easily day hike. You probably, depending on your, if you want to do a 15-mile day hike versus a
3 to 7 sounds better.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if you wanted to do a longer, like a 15-mile, then you could probably make it all the way to the west side and look, into our valley. But otherwise, you probably would have to pick like just one little section. But yeah. Definitely doable.
Yeah, and there was some, I think it was this Rohrbach trailhead down at the southern part of the park that we had looked at kind of longingly, like we wished we would have had time to do a day hike from there. It looked really beautiful, but it didn't make a lot of sense with the other places we wanted to go in the park. It just didn't work. Yeah, but yeah, you could definitely do a day hike.
My memory had been that Dolly Sods was very remote, but it looked like on at least one of those maps, there was a neighborhood nearby one of the trails where you were hiking.
Well, the west side.
Yeah, right. And
I didn't realize that.
From there too, but it was like private on like wasn't the ski land or something? Like you had to pay for parking, and we decided not to go in that. But yeah, that Canaan Valley, there was some residential.
Yeah. Actually, in West Virginia, they pronounce it Canaan.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. We were trying to remember.
Yes. Canaan Valley.
And once we got kind of up to where that overlook was, we could see some houses and some neighborhoods and development and things. Yeah. But the whole rest of the time, as long as we weren't looking west off the ridge, there was no development. So that was nice.
Well, thank you guys. Makes me want to go back to West Virginia, take a trip there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Did you see any dogs on the trail? Was there any kind of restriction on dogs or?
Good question. I don't remember if there was a restriction on dogs, but I don't remember seeing. Oh wait, there was a dog in that hippie village.
Yeah, I think dogs.
Of course there was. With the bandana on, right?
Dog.
Yeah, I think dogs are allowed, but I don't recall.
Yeah.
Since we weren't traveling with any, we didn't look.
Yeah.
But yes, we did see at least one dog.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
That older couple.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Thanks. That was a great little adventure in my mind.
Yeah.
Travel.
Do you have any pictures of any of the people you encountered?
We didn't really.
We didn't really take any
Mhm.
pictures of people, I don't think, that we were at or we were with, aside from like the picture we have with, you know, the river guide that the one of the kayakers took. But yeah, we don't have a lot of pictures of the folks. I think we had a couple from like the overlooks we were at, looking, you know, watching the sunset at the overlooks. There were some people around, but yeah, we didn't really get any pictures of people. Just us.
Fun. It just would be fun to know if you ran into anybody I knew.
Yeah.
we saw very few people. I mean,
I was thinking about the hippie encampment.
yeah.
Right.
It was a millennial hippie encampment. They were all 20 somethings.
Yeah.
Well, I know quite a few of them too.
Good.
You may have known them then, yeah.
Mhm.
They look like
Especially if they were playing music.
Yeah,
yes.
they were.
Yeah, and that was one of the hardest parts for us about going to West Virginia during COVID, is that we weren't able to go like see live music, because Lenae and I would have really loved that. You know, to see.
There was actually, I think it was on my birthday, there was someone that was supposed to perform outdoors.
Yes, and we were planning
at
for
a
it.
pub, and we were planning to go. Gail, it was a place that Gail had suggested, but they ended up canceling the show.
Purple Fiddle.
Yep,
Yep.
at the Purple Fiddle. Yep.
So yeah, so no live music for us at that time.
Is there any mountain biking there?
Oh my God, yes.
There is definitely mountain biking there.
Yeah.
Not in Dolly Sods. I don't think you
No.
could go there, because it would just the trail degradation would be a problem, and it would be too wet, really.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a photo that we didn't share of a sign that's from kind of a more trafficked part of the trail, and then it has it's a no bicycling sign, and the trail beyond it is just a swamp. So I don't think you'd want a bicycle there anyway.
I wouldn't want a bicycle there. Kai might though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But
There's a lot of rock climbing too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you could tell the area had brought, you know, really was a magnet for a lot of like the whitewater kayakers and everything too. And you can kayak in the Cheat River as well, but because we were there after certain dates,
Labor Day.
Labor Day, a lot of the rental places didn't have kayaks anymore. But luckily, this river rafting place that was actually in Maryland, I believe, right?
It was in Maryland, yeah.
Yeah.
We had
Fresno.
initially planned to do a flatwater kayak on the Cheat instead of the whitewater rafting, but yeah, we couldn't come up with an outfitter that would work.
Yeah.
So
And we
did what we could to get on the water.
Yeah, and we have kayaks, but we didn't think it made a lot of sense to haul them all that way just to put in for one day.
Yeah.
Not great gas mileage.
Hey, this is Michael. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and allowing us to go there with you without getting our feet wet or going through mud.
It was the cleanest way to experience Dolly.
Yeah. I had a question. What about bird life? I didn't hear any comments that I remember on bird life. Did you see much, or what is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we did see birds. You know, the songbirds were still there. I don't remember seeing anything large, really.
No, I don't remember anything large. No birds of prey that we saw.
Right.
There.
There was evidence of owls, but we didn't really see. We never saw any. We just saw their pellets. Thank you. So yeah, so we certainly saw some birds, but there was nothing that was maybe totally, you know, exceptionally remarkable.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Did you guys record this?
We did, yes. So this will be available to watch later. I'll put it up on the Severson Dells YouTube channel, and I'll share that on the social media for Severson Dells too.
Awesome.
Yeah. And if you have any like questions that come up later too, don't hesitate to email me or Lenae. If you want to plan your own trip to this area, we'd be happy to share some of the resources to help you do that. We definitely recommend it. We were really happy we went there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lenae.
You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
I
Good to
want
see
you
you.
to talk to your
Yeah.
father-in-law what the possibilities are when we are coming up north from south, where to stop for several days going through West Virginia. So maybe you have a little itinerary for him.
Okay, I'll see what I can.
Thank you.